You're going to be stuck with me for a little while. I should say, hello, Bioneers. Edna Chavez yesterday? Jacqueline Garcelle? I mean, I have been consistently blown away by the last 48 hours, and I don't know how it's been for you, but I am feeling full of hope and energized. And I have to admit that as I worked on these remarks, I must have trashed several versions of it. Every time I thought I had formulated a coherent presentation, another dramatic shift, another revelation, one of the countless mind-boggling scandals we are currently enduring, another assault on decency somewhere in the world, another challenge to my previous notions of reality would force me to reevaluate what I thought I should say. I know I'm not the only one during this very dark time in US and global politics to experience disorientation and to start to question so much of what I had taken for granted and thought I understood. I have to admit, I've been experiencing many moments of gloom and despair. But as I was getting ready to come to Bioneers, an experience I always find rejuvenating, I began to look around for guidance to help me build up my resilience, find a bit more clarity, and reconnect with a sense of purpose. I looked in both predictable and unpredictable places, conversations with my family members, my own experiences and memories, in observations of the natural world, in the worlds of leaders and thinkers I respect, both contemporary and from generations past, quite a few of whom have been here at Bioneers over the years. I can't say I found any simple answers, but the exposure to all that wisdom helped. And then I read something that once again blew my mind and sent me into another tailspin. An investigative piece in Wired magazine revealed that Russian trolls had been behind efforts to create dissent among Star Wars fans. Folks for whom those films serve as empowering metaphors for their own heroic journeys through life. How amazingly clever and how diabolical. This was an attempt to penetrate people's myths and divide and demoralize them in their psychic core. This is akin to an enemy attacking not your land or infrastructure or even just your elections, but your very dreams. Cue Leonardo DiCaprio and Ellen Page in the cast of Inception to get to the bottom of this. It reminded me of a speech by George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, no less, in which he was outlining a key Star Wars moral theme. He talked about the contrast between light and dark. There are two kinds of people in the world, he said, compassionate people and selfish people. If you go to the side of the light, you'll be happy because compassion, helping other people, not thinking about yourself, thinking about others, that gives you joy, joy that you can't get any other way. While being selfish, just following your pleasures, you're always going to be unhappy. You'll never get to the point. You'll get this little instant shot of pleasure, but it goes away, and then you're stuck where you were before. The more you do it, the worse it gets. You finally get everything you want, and you're miserable because there's nothing at the end of the road. Whereas if you're compassionate and you get to the end of the road, you've helped so many people. Now, granted, this is a simplified teaching geared toward big-budget movie morality tales, and all of us contain a little bit of light and dark potential. But it still contains some core truths. And thinking about Lucas's words, the sheer amount of darkness we are currently seeing in the world made me begin to wonder if the dark side just has too many advantages, whether the force really isn't with us. And I began to doubt the words of Martin Luther King, which I had long wholeheartedly subscribed to. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. I had just been seeing so much more injustice than justice lately, and in so many parts of the world at once. But ultimately, two wise voices got me back on track. The first was, ironically, the late Joseph Campbell, who advised George Lucas on Star Wars mythology. I came across a quote of his. As you proceed through life, following your own path, birds will shit on you. Don't bother to brush it off. Getting a comedic view of your situation gives you spiritual distance. Having a sense of humor saves you. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Yes, the age of Trump has been making me lose my sense of humor. If I can't laugh, above all, at myself, the bastards will really have won. So thanks, Joseph. Step number 1 accomplished. I turned the laugh track back on. And that reawakened humor triggered a family memory, an anecdote about my father, a world-renowned researcher on primates. When he was a young professor, he'd been working with a group of chimps to whom he was teaching sign language. He was out with a young male chimpanzee named Bowie and a group of human graduate students. In those days, the chimps unfortunately were required to wear a short leash around their neck that was called a lead. As many of you know, they're 8 times the strength of humans, pound for pound. So in fact, they were therefore perceived as quite dangerous. At the end of the lesson, my dad told Bowie that it was time to go back into the chimp compound, which was an unpleasant combination of rusty cages that no human would want to live in, so why would a chimp? Bowie protested by promptly climbing up a tree. But my dad, the young alpha male professor, was not about to be humiliated in front of his students by a chimp. So he thought he'd show Bowie who was boss by wrapping the lead around his wrist so that Bowie had no room for movement, getting very close to the tree and angrily demanding that Bowie come down. In response, Bowie looked at my dad, reached the lead, and lifted my 200-pound dad swinging off the ground. Now, talk about humility and humor. So my dad, in what I can only infer was a moment of ego-free clarity, changed the subject. And he looked up at Bowie and said, "I forgive you." Delighted, Bowie leapt out of the tree and into his arms, and off they went. So not only might birds shit on us, but non-human animals, because we are animals, and the rest of nature will surely show us who is really in control, bringing us back into line if we don't learn respect, compassion, forgiveness, and empathy for all beings, not just humans. The second voice that helped me regain my bearings was an essay from Rebecca Solnit. And that really gave me some much-needed historical perspective. It drove home how many things have really dramatically changed for the better. She wrote, 30 years ago, Ronald Reagan was president. The threat of an apocalyptic nuclear war seemed very real. A large swath of the earth lived under totalitarianism that got called communism, which seemed like it might last centuries rather than just another year. Anita Hill had yet to speak up, and almost no one addressed sexual harassment. Same-sex marriage was virtually inconceivable to most people. The Lawrence versus Texas ruling decriminalizing gay sex nationwide was 15 years away. First Peoples had been almost entirely erased in public discourse, and we got most of our energy from coal. Aha! Thanks, Rebecca. Step 2, check. Don't lose sight of the long game because of all distractions of this current surrealistic nightmare. I remembered then the quote by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, which said, "I am not an optimist, I am a prisoner of hope." I'm not an optimist, but I am a prisoner of hope. And I think hope is what brings so many of us back here to Bioneers each year. And this weekend has really helped reboot my hope. Hearing about all the inspired, courageous work and the innovative projects so many of you are involved in has dispelled much of the darkness I was wallowing in. Hearing from so many youth from such diverse backgrounds, identities, and ethnicities who are here participating in our youth leadership program on scholarships, which all of you make possible, thank you, has given me an enormous faith in our future. Theirs is the generation so far ahead of us from the get-go, allergic to racism and injustice in their very core, totally comfortable with the authentic expression of gender identity, unwilling to tolerate continued gun violence. My son August, who is 17, is here today. He has grown up as part of this expansive generation. His acceptance and openness to people from all walks of life inspires me. It is what he knows is right in his boat. Sorry, I just got choked up. Love you, August. In many ways, August has become a teacher to me. And you heard yesterday from the extraordinary Edna Chavez, whose strength and resilience exemplify the unstoppable momentum of these young leaders. This generation will not go back in time. I now see that I was wrong about Martin Luther King's wisdom. I'm convinced that today's emerging leaders will ultimately succeed in ushering far more enlightened times. And it's important to note that much of the progress we have made in the past few decades is still in place, even though we still face many challenges. So that has been some of my inner journey this past year. I can't promise I won't have moments of doubt and fear, but one thing my quest for guidance and this incredibly uplifting weekend have reinforced for me is that no matter how infuriating the daily headlines might be, I will do my best to keep at it, to work for the world we want to see, and to choose hope, empathy, and compassion. But I will also do my best to remember not to take myself too seriously, lest the birds and the chimps and the entire natural world decide to set me straight.